You're probably looking at this and thinking, oh great, another river table. But that's not what this is. This was supposed to be a quick project, but I bought the wrong slab, wasted a week, built a mold, ran out of epoxy, lifted some weights, and ended up building something you should probably never try to build because it's ridiculous. So if you want to see what happens when a C- woodworker tries to imitate the most popular woodworker on YouTube, stick around. It might just change the way you feel about these kinds of projects. This is a 9-foot slab of hickory from New York. It's 3 inches thick and honestly not in perfect shape. If I wanted to, I could probably snap it in half. You think it'd be cheap, right? Well, think again. I bet you'll never guess how much it cost. Buying the slab, which started as a free tree, reminded me of buying bottled water. You start with free water, then it has to be filtered, and that costs something. Then bottled, another cost, probably a few cents. Then labeled, packaged, shipped, stocked, more cost. Every step along the way, someone is legitimately adding value and understandably charging for the work they do. And then there's you, holding a cold bottle of purified water in your hand, walking out of 7-Eleven on your way home to binge YouTube while you fall asleep to a Ben's woodworking video about the Conturo, wondering how it costs $3 for something that came out of the ground for free. Wood works the same way. This slab started as a tree, and then someone had to cut it down, and they got paid. Then it had to be hauled out. More money, then milled into slabs by someone with the tools and the skill to do so. Cha-ching. Then it got shipped. In this case, all the way from New York to Texas. Truckers are people too, and diesel isn't cheap. Then came drying. You could air dry it, but that takes years literally, and someone has to babysit a stack of lumber on their property for 3 years, hoping it doesn't twist like a pretzel. This slab, it went through a state-of-the-art vacuum kiln that does in weeks what nature does in years. It pulls the moisture content down to 6% and kills every bug trying to live rent-free inside, which I appreciate. That kiln, it cost $160,000, so yeah, that guy's not doing it for free. Then it was surfaced, graded, priced, and put on display by someone who already paid a lot for it at this point, and understandably wants to make a profit. And then I showed up. Except this isn't 7-Eleven, and it's not a $3 bottle of water. It's a $2,500 slab of wood that used to live in New York and now lives in Dallas, the same city as Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis. But yeah, $2,500. Honestly, that's a really good deal considering everything it took to get this slab to me flat, moisture-free, and bug-free. Now, I was able to negotiate the price down a little, and the woodshed really worked with me on it. But the cool thing about a place like the woodshed is that they have slabs for every budget. I saw a local elm slab going for $300 and 15-foot Mappa burrow slabs from the UK priced at $15,000. So whatever your budget, they've got you covered. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go celebrate my haul by cracking open a $30 bottle of water that claims to be melted iceberg. Wait, is someone actually selling melted iceberg on Amazon? Woof.
Everything in the green rack's gonna be 2 inches and thinner, so that's all charcuterie stock really. Small shell.
Remember when I said I bought the wrong slab? Well, here's what happened. The slab you've been watching me work with, it's actually the second slab I bought for this project. The first one was a beautiful piece of monkey pod from Costa Rica. You've heard of monkey pod, right? Yeah, exactly. I had this whole story in my head. I could introduce you to a lesser known wood with a cool backstory, how it's grown, harvested, replanted. It would blow your mind. And let's be honest, everyone on YouTube uses walnut. And while I love walnut and it's one of my favorites, I figured different is better than better, and using a different wood species would make for an interesting video. However, I made 2 critical mistakes. First, I went in with a closed mind. Now, having a vision is great and is needed, I would argue, but I was too locked in. I wasn't listening to what the project actually needed. And second, I didn't bring a proper frame, something to help me visualize how the slab I was trying to pick out would work in the space of my final dimensions. Now, we used one at the shop, but it was way too short, wasn't the right size, dimensions, and it gave me the wrong idea of, hey, this could possibly work. After a few hours of flattening it on their giant joint-to-wood machine, which is really cool, and an hour-long drive home, once I got it in the shop and started playing with it, it hit me, and I couldn't avoid the truth. I made a very expensive mistake, both in time and money. And here's what I learned. The wood speaks, and you've got to listen. No matter how hard I tried, that monkey pod slab, as pretty as it was, just didn't want to be what I had in mind. There was this man-made straight line, probably from a chainsaw, that was getting in the way of any organic design I could come up with that didn't involve fixing it with 15 gallons of epoxy. Even the owner of the woodshed agreed, and what's really cool is he offered to take it back and help me find something that would work. But once I saw the slab, the golden grain you see right here, I wasn't returning this beauty. So that monkey pod is still waiting. You'll see it photobombing a lot in the background of the rest of the shots in this video, and it already knows what it wants to become, and I've listened. I'm going to make a... You're cute. You really think I'm going to tell you what I'm going to turn this into? Not a chance. We'll save that for a future video. Okay, it's going to be a waterfall desk, but don't tell anyone. We've all seen those epoxy slab videos on YouTube. You know the ones. Big pour, glossy finish, dramatic twists and turns, and a $20,000 price tag at the end. Maybe they're worth it. I'm not so sure, but here's what I do know. For this project, I'm keeping track of every expense, from materials and consumables to the hours I spend in the shop. Then, at the end of the video, instead of just saying, here's a $20,000 block of wood, I'll show you exactly what it really cost to build this and how long it actually took. And together, we'll answer the real question. If you wanted to build pieces like this as a business, how much would you actually need to charge to make it worth your time? Speaking of posting projects to social media, I don't know about you, but I've got a really conflicted relationship with it. On one hand, I love that I can learn so much from so many people, usually for free. But on the other hand, if you're not careful, it's way too easy to compare your behind the scenes reality to someone else's highlight reel. Before my wife and I had kids, I remember seeing friends post these perfect zoo trips with their 9-month-olds on Instagram, and so we thought our trips to the zoo should be perfect too. But here's what actually happens to everyone. The kid falls asleep on the way there, has a full meltdown in the parking lot when you wake him up. The bears are nowhere to be found, and honestly, I'm not even sure the zoo owns half the animals on their signs. You buy one of those injection molded zebras from a kiosk and it melts in the Texas sun after 7 minutes. The popcorn is stale and overpriced, and on the way back to the car, a diaper blowout, of course. Nobody posts that stuff, thankfully. And I guess my point is, if you ever feel like life is a mess and everyone else online has it all together, just remember, almost nobody posts pictures of the diaper blowout or screaming kid in the parking lot. And those that do need to be arrested, because no one wants to see a used diaper full of Indian food with an Instagram filter. Wow, that was uncalled for. After you get that image out of your head, remember, don't compare your behind the scenes reality to someone else's highlight reel. There's a reason Instagram calls them reels. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because you're watching a highlight reel, and I don't want you walking away with some false impression that I've got it all figured out, or that I'm rich, or have a trust fund, or have perfect hair and a flawless technique. That's just not true, sadly. In the last few years, I've been able to buy tools I never dreamed I'd own and build a shop I never thought I could have. But the truth is, not long ago, I had nothing. When I started woodworking in 2009, the only tool I had was a cheap Black & Decker drill someone gave me as a wedding gift, and a 12-pack of Harbor Freight screwdrivers someone else bought, decided they didn't want, and then gifted to me, formaldehyde fumes and all. So here's a little behind the scenes on how I built my first shop with no money to get me to where I am now. Friends would ask me to build things all the time. Coffee tables, desks, bookshelves, picnic tables, and I'd say yes, even though I barely knew what I was doing, but they didn't know that. So I'd borrow tools from neighbors, and then I'd price the job so that I could buy one of the tools that I needed. No profit, just slow, steady progress. As the projects got bigger, the tool needs got bigger. So I'd include the cost of a jointer or miter saw in the bid, and instead of paying myself in cash, I'd pay myself in tools, the next best thing. I kept doing that for about 8 years until I had a decent mid-level shop that looked like it was sponsored by Rigid and Home Depot. It wasn't. And then Most of it was stolen from me. In 2017, I was building a house, something I'd always dreamed of doing, and to afford it, I had to do most of the finished work myself. Floors, trim, cabinets, counters, landscaping, all of it. For 9 months, I was there early, late, weekends, every spare moment. 2 weeks before we moved in, I got lazy. It was late and I left all my tools at the house overnight. I figured no big deal, I'll be back early in the morning to lay sod with some friends, it'll be fine. But when I pulled up at 7 a.m. with the grass ready to go, I saw broken glass by the back door. Someone had broken in and wiped me out. The big stuff table saw jointer was still off-site and safe, but every other smaller tool I owned was gone. Drills, sanders, circular saws, extension cords, chisels, everything. Around $5,000 worth of gear stolen in one night. I held it together while my friends were there, but when they left, I sat down on the grass and wept. Not because of the money, but because I had worked hard for so long for those tools. I had earned them, and in a moment, it felt like all that hard work was erased by a thief. My dad was there. He emptied his wallet, gave me everything he had. My brother gave me $1,000 to help me finish the house. And for a while, I honestly thought about giving up woodworking. I didn't think I'd ever rebuild my tool collection or get back to where I was. Then one night, I was watching a football game. Drew Brees, great name by the way, broke Dan Marino's single-season passing yardage record. They stopped the game to celebrate the achievement. He ran to the sideline, hugged his kids, and he said, "You can accomplish anything in life you're willing to work hard for." And that stuck with me. So I decided to stop feeling sorry for myself and get back to work again. That theft happened 8 years ago. And honestly, if you had told that young man sitting on the grass, crying on freshly laid Zionzuiza, that one day people around the world would watch him build things in his garage, that he'd have a real workshop, that some of the woodworker YouTubers that he looked up to would eventually become real friends, he wouldn't have believed it. He wouldn't have even dreamed it. But here's the thing. It didn't happen because I'm special. It happened because I didn't give up and I wasn't afraid to work hard. And if you're watching this and things are really hard right now, if you're discouraged, if you're broke, if you're tired, I get it. I've been there. Some days I am there. So cry if you need to. Sit in the grass, feel the feels, but then stand up, dust yourself off, and get back to work because you can build something amazing. Not all at once, but usually bit by bit. Just don't fall in love with the highlights. Fall in love with the behind the scenes. I've got a little behind the scenes trick for you. If you're a return viewer, you know we've been building this shop for the last year. And yes, I'll link to earlier episodes below in case you missed them. The one question I get a lot is how we attach these wood walls to the metal structure. It's actually easier than you think. There's this incredible cheat code if you have the right smartphone. You just set your lumber on the ground, open your camera, pan down, and then whip it up real fast and boom, all the 2x4s are installed inside the metal wall. And the same thing with plywood. Just lean back dramatically, point your phone to the ceiling, say hi to Cheeks, and then when you come down really fast, the wall's done. Now the alternative is screwing each panel in one at a time like an animal, so I highly recommend this camera trick. When people do epoxy slab projects on YouTube, usually it's for a horizontal surface like a desk or a table, but I wonder how many of you figured out that what I'm building is the world's coolest shop door to separate my office from my shop. Now, I didn't really go into detail on this office build in the last video, mostly because honestly it's kind of boring, but here's something really cool. I built this ceiling without thinking about air conditioning, and by complete accident, I found out that Mr. Cool makes an air handler that fits perfectly inside a 16-inch cavity. That's why I partnered with Mr. Cool to add cooling in my shop and heat in the winter. And since this office is pretty large and I might divide it up later, I installed a multi-zone system with two 12K air handlers so I can cool down or heat up different parts of the office depending on the season. Now the ceiling cassettes come with a really cool template for drywall installs, but since our ceiling is open, it made positioning and installing super easy. We popped off a few wall panels so we could drill through the purlins and run line sets and control wires inside the wall. Most people would just run these externally and coil any extra behind the condenser, but since we had access, I wanted a cleaner look. Running the lines is simple. just take care not to kink the copper line sets. And while most people buy plastic condenser pads on Amazon, I weirdly enjoy concrete work, so I made my own custom pads to match the look of the building because I'm an animal. For the line guard cover outside, I roped in my product designer and had him design a custom profile adapter that I could 3D print. An hour later, we had a seamless transition that looks way better. Installing a Mr. Cool system isn't hard. The hardest part for me was just working up the courage to drill a 3.5-inch hole in the side of my brand new building. Now, I've obsessed over every detail in this space, and I was terrified of getting the placement wrong, but it worked out. And yes, I sealed the line guard cover with silicone at the top and the sides to keep everything dry. We gently uncoiled the line sets, made the connections with a crescent wrench, and then opened the valves. Mr. Cool system uses these patented pre-charged lines, so you don't need certifications, vacuum pumps, or gauges. Just hook it up, open the valves, and the refrigerant fills the system. We checked for leaks using soapy water, and once it was good, we added sound dampeners, cleaned it up, and called it done. Each unit came with a remote, but we also added a USB Wi-Fi adapter so I could control everything from my phone. And what's really cool is in the app, you can set up groups which let you turn on or off lots of devices together. And honestly, these things just work. We've already had 100-degree days and the office cools down in about 10 minutes. Since the DIY ductless mini split system is a heat pump, it can heat and cool through the different seasons. And honestly, if I can install them, you can definitely install them. Get comfortable today at MrCoolDIY.com. Now for the fun part, releasing the slab from the mold. Honestly, I didn't think we were going to get it off. YouTubers swear by this red tuck tape, which is stupid expensive by the way, 13 bucks a roll. But after some gentle encouragement with some shims and a crowbar, it finally budged. And it turns out the tape actually works. It looks pretty cool. Then came a decision point. I thought long and hard about building a router sled to flatten this thing. It would have been fun, probably look cool on video, but then I asked my new best friends at the woodshed how much they would charge for slab flattening, and I almost lost it. For solid wood, they charge 10 bucks a square foot. If it has epoxy, $12.50. That includes both sides. So that means this slab, which comes out to 25 square feet, cost a total of $315.75 for someone else to flatten it, both sides, perfect, without me doing any of the work. Now I've got a big boy router that could have done the job, but by the time I built the jig, bought a massive bit, spent a full day hogging it down, cleaned up the mess, and burned 3,000 calories with my frail little body, I think it would have cost me way more than 315 bucks to do it myself. And we both know I probably would have messed it up. To prove how much mess I didn't make, the joint-to-wood planer made 7 full bags of sawdust, 5 pounds each. That's about 105 pounds of sawdust that my router didn't have to remove in my shop. So yeah, if you're in the North Texas area and want something flattened right, bring your 10 bucks a square foot to Arlington. It's totally worth it. Now, I'm not gonna lie here, the next part is kind of embarrassing. I waited a few days to cut the slab to final size. It looked so good and had put so much work into it by this point. I was honestly afraid to mess up the measurements because I don't do math real good. Eventually, I worked up the courage, triple checked everything, took multiple passes for a clean cut, and used both my TSO guide rail squares to make sure it was dead on. Since the door is 1 3/4 inches thick, I set the track saw to 3 degrees and cut a slight back bevel on the strike side so that the door would clear the jamb when opening. At least that's what a video on YouTube said to do, but we both know probably shouldn't trust that. And then came the worst part of any woodworking project: sanding. Days of sanding, no exaggeration. The joint-to-wood machine did a great job, but it still left a lot of subtle planer marks. And this hickory, it's hard, which makes it not easy to sand. So I had to pull out the bad boy, the Festool Rotex. If Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was a sander, I think he'd be a Rotex. Basically an angle grinder disguised as a sander. You know how with a regular sander, if you press down too hard, the pad stops spinning? Well, yeah, the Rotex doesn't care. You push harder and it grinds harder. It's more aggressive than a Facebook retargeting ad that won't leave you alone. Then came what looks like a satisfying part of the process, filling all the tiny holes and voids exposed during sanding. And it was cool for about 5 minutes. And then your patience runs out and you sand too aggressively because you're thinking about a waterfall desk that's been living in your head rent-free for the past few weeks. You're a starter, not a finisher. You're ready to move on, and the next thing you know, you're pulling out all the CA glue you just filled in because you're a rookie and used too aggressive of a sanding grit. Or something like that. What ended up working really well for me was sealing the trouble areas first with some thin Total Boat High Performance epoxy just to keep the surrounding wood from staining. Then I mixed in some Battleship Gray mica powder, trying to guess the amount I used for big gallons of this, and I was able to fill in the remaining voids. This took more time, but I really didn't want to stain the grain with the dark epoxy, so I'd seal it clear, wait an hour, then fill it with black, wait for a day to cure, sand it down, then repeat over and over. It was a real joy in case you're not picking up on it. And just when I thought I was done, I hit it with some harsh raking light, and surprise, some sections of the wood were still a little rotten, something that I really wasn't looking for or paying attention to. Not soft, but just enough to show up under some harsh raking light. So that sent me on an emergency errand to find some kind of wood rot stabilizer, and shockingly, I found something that actually worked, was easy to apply, and cheap too. This door needs a jamb. I've never built one before, but here we are. The one thing I did know, I wasn't about to hang this thing using a handful of short 3/4 inch screws. This slab is heavy. I'm guessing close to 200 pounds or so. So if this door's gonna swing, it's gotta swing on something solid. So here's the game plan. Coming from a guy who's never done any of this before. Step 1, buy some cheap paint grade beech, 3/4 inch thick. Laminate it up to double the thickness so you end up with stock that's 1.5 inches. Step 2, use every clamp you own and then find some more. Step 3, fake joint one edge with a track saw. Step 4, rip it to width on the table saw. Side note, a few months ago, I gave away a brand new Harvey table saw to a viewer, and I got to use it for a little bit. There was a lot to like, but the blades that came with it were unreal. I've never heard of this company, Leets, but they make Harvey's blades, and they're legit the sharpest blades that I've ever used. It felt like I was cutting butter through this thick hardwood. So if you're ever looking for a high-end blade, check out those from Harvey. It's not an affiliate link, it's not sponsored. I just really like these blades. Step 5, don't overthink the joinery. Just glue it and screw it. It'll be fine. Step 6, admire the first jamb you ever built because somehow it actually fits. Now for the fun part, make a jig that makes a jig. We whipped up a simple hinge template and 3D printed it, super easy. Then I laid out the hinge placements on a scrap piece of plywood cut to the exact length of the jamb. I think the fancy name for this is a story pole, maybe. I don't know, I've never done any of this before. After roughing out most of the waste with a jigsaw, I attached one of those oversized acrylic router bases that I got from a very handsome guy online. Okay, it's me. I'm the handsome guy. Handsome is debatable, but it's me. I make these. If you've got a trim router and you don't have one of these bases yet, we're running a short flash sale right now. It's the lowest price we've had in a while, and we're throwing in some bonus gifts during the promo. It'll help you route safer, more confidently, and in some cases, basically eliminate the dust you make on cuts like this. We make all these here in the USA, and for those who have already bought one, thanks for supporting our small family business. All right, now this next part, super scary. If you made fun of me earlier for being timid about cutting the slab to size, go ahead and pop some popcorn, because routing into the side of this door had me real anxious. I was mostly afraid of messing up the direction of the hinge mortises and had no room for error here. And yeah, I messed something up and probably invented a swear word. Probably. Since I've never done any of this before, I temporarily installed the hinges and test fit the door, and shockingly, it lined up great. However, when I went to remove the hinges, I snapped a screw. Thought it was a fluke, and then I snapped another. And upon some deep soul searching and reflection, I'm pretty sure I used the wrong screws. Now, I've always liked SPAC screws, mostly because I hate Phillips heads and I love the star patterns that don't strip, but apparently they're brittle on hardwood and not a quality screw. Also, I used coarse threads in hardwood and I probably should have used fine threads, I think. I'm not sure, but I am sure that Stan in Iowa will probably roast me in the comments and show me the error of my ways. Love you long time, Stan. So if you see the hinges still installed while I'm sanding and finishing, it's because I was too afraid to touch any of the other screws and I just left them in there. Not ideal, but you know, it is what it is. I've got issues. I hate sanding, but you know what I hate even more? finishing, mostly because I suck at it. I can never get that flawless, smooth pro look until I started using hard wax oils. You've probably seen them around, and I won't mention any names, but personally, I think that green can is way too expensive. Now, I hate the micro measuring, and I'm not crazy about the flat matte finish it leaves behind. The product I'm using here is a test sample from a friend. They're working on a hard wax oil that's easier to use, looks better, cures faster, and is safer on your skin, and best of all, doesn't require measuring thanks to the way it's packaged. That's about all I can say for now. There's no link, nothing to buy, I'm not being paid. I just told my friend I'd try it out, and if I liked it, I'd show it in the video. So here we are. If you're interested in a more affordable, safer, faster, and easier alternative to the usual stuff, drop a comment below and let me know. Maybe it might help a friend out with some information, might help you out too, but I kind of like this stuff. I also found this really cool maker based out of Austin, Texas, who builds incredible metal and glass doors, and he also runs a small online store where he sells these one-of-a-kind metal handles. I reached out to see if I could buy one with a few small modifications to better fit this door design, and he totally knocked it out of the park. His name is Michael, and his company is called Hardware Design, spelled without the A's because, well, apparently he got a public Texas education. Wait. I got a public Texas education. That's not very nice. Sorry, Michael. Anyway, there was one handle in particular that I really liked, but I didn't want the mounting plate to cover up any of the epoxy that I've been working on, so he made it float, and I love it. When we finally installed the door, I was fully expecting something to go horribly wrong, like we'd drop it, the handle would snap, the hinges would rip out, or the whole thing would be out of level and completely crooked. Hate to disappoint you, but a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. My first door, my first jamb, my first time mortising hinges, perfect. I learned this little trick from YouTube University. You attach the hinge side of the jamb first and then let the strike side float. Then once the door is hung, you can shim the back side of the jamb to fine tune the reveal so that it's perfect. And it actually worked really well. Even gaps, smooth swing, no disasters. Honestly, I'm as shocked as you are. Since we left the plywood walls off on the inside of the office, we were able to attach the jamb from the inside of the wall, which meant no visible fasteners on the interior face of the jamb. Nice and clean. For the door trim, I picked up a great tip from my buddy Jerry over at KJ Sawdust. Instead of installing each piece of trim one at a time on the wall, which I used to do, which never lined up quite right, you build the whole trim frame on the ground using pocket screws and glue, and then you just lift it into place, face nail it, adjusting for the reveals as you go. Way faster, way cleaner, and way less frustrating. One of the last things I did is Michael made me this push plate so that oils from my hand wouldn't build up on the door itself. And I was really nervous about the screws, especially going into epoxy. So I used this trick that my dad taught me, and it's that you take a block of wax and you wax and lubricate the screws before you screw them in using a hand screwdriver. Totally works. So if you ever run into a problem where you're trying to screw things in and it's super tight and you're afraid of splitting things, grab you a cheap bar of wax. 60% of the time, it works every time. This project taught me a lot, not just about building a door, but about patience, problem solving, and trusting the process even when you're in over your head. And honestly, that's what I love about woodworking. You can take on something you've never done before, struggle through it, grow your skill set, buy some new tools, and come out on the other side with something you're proud of. So as I promised at the beginning of this video, here's the total cost to build this door from start to finish, including my time. And to close the door on this, if you were running a woodworking business and you built this exact door for a client, how much would you charge to make it worth your time and turn a profit? Drop the answer in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think.